I'm Martin Kucera. I'm a senior product manager here at Mews, and today I'll be speaking about innovation within large and established companies. There are certain unique challenges related to this discipline, and I would like to go a little deeper into that topic. Before we start, the established company in my presentation is a company with about 100 million ARR, so that's the annual recurring revenue, just for your context, what we are talking about. And let's start with a question. Who of you thinks that innovation and launching new product verticals within these companies is easy? Nobody? Really? So who thinks it's difficult? Cool. There are some people who don't think anything, but that's fine. Hopefully you will understand it later. So yeah, I would say it's both. Like in the large company, you can benefit from the infrastructure of this company. You probably have many resources in-house. You have the funding, because again, the company already has significant revenues. You have direct access to customers, which is very important. You have access to data, and it's also relatively easy to scale once that product is successful. You can scale it much faster than if you have no customers at all. On the other hand, the large organization can be also quite rigid. It can be slow. It can be like focusing on the current success. Maybe you know the story of Intel, #1 chip maker 15 years ago. Today, they are almost irrelevant. So sometimes these companies are too much focused on the current success, and they don't see the potential and the impact of long-term investment. If you start today, probably the product will be very small and insignificant compared to the money that you are making elsewhere. But if you invest for the long term, then it's really having the impact. And last but not least, if you have an established company, you already have the customers, and they very often approach you with like feature requests, ideas. They sort of have their own needs, and it's very difficult to battle this setup, because the innovation is often building something no one is asking for. You must justify that investment, but no one is asking for this. So in a large company, it can be difficult to justify it because there are so many requests coming from the existing customers who already pay you. So what do we know about innovations in Mews? I'm not sure if everyone here is familiar with our business, with the travel industry, hospitality, and so on. Mews has been innovating for a long time. We were the first company in this field to introduce like deeply embedded payments, for example, or open API. So today we have a marketplace with, 1,600 integrations in it. Nobody was doing that before us. And I have an example, which is a kind of a newer initiative, which I'm leading here. And it's a project we internally call Space-Time. So before I describe what it is, I will provide you with a little bit of context. When we started building Space-Time, that was the beginning of the COVID pandemic. The hotels were sitting empty in the city centers, waiting for customers, guests. They were not coming because the borders were closed. But they always had all these other resources and services they could offer. They had the pools, they had the restaurants, they had the meeting rooms. The parking spots were very valuable back then. They were just lacking the tools to manage them and sell them efficiently. And we thought, what if we bring everything into a single platform? Because the market was very fragmented. For each of these services, you would have a separate system. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't share the customer data, and so on. So it felt almost like a no-brainer to us. Again, no customer was asking for this, surprisingly. This was an initiative and a discussion we had internally. No one was asking for it, but since the market was in total mayhem, and there was not much to lose back then, we were just like, okay, let's do it, let's build it, let's try it, and we will see. So if you get to this point and you have the idea, it's really good to start with defining the vision for the product. And what I always recommend is to just write it down. There is a great book from Amazon. It's called Working Backwards. They write a lot about writing the one-pagers which describe the vision for the product. This is slightly similar. In our case, we had two visions, because the first part, that was the deep technical consolidation of Mews, which was necessary. Just one example, hotel is usually sold per night. If you sell a meeting room, you don't sell it per night. You want to sell it per day or per hour. If you sell a, like student accommodation, that's probably sold per week or even per month. So you need to unlock the original constraint of nightly reservations. So that was the technical vision. And then we had a product vision. And that's how this change will impact the customers and the guests. How will it transform the industry? So we had 2 articles and we published them immediately. And then we started building. So first of all, we had a long-term investment commitment from the leadership because this was the big bet. And second, we had a small team of people who were just kind of agile, flexible. Back then, it was only 3 of us, so 1 front-end engineer, 1 back-end engineer, and myself, and we were taking care of everything, like the specification, wireframes, testing, I don't know, documentation, all of these things within these 3 people. And that's how we were bootstrapping the development for maybe 2 years. So yeah, this is where you start. You don't want to have a large team. I know that Stripe, for example, the payment processor, they always say they don't have more than 10 people on a team when a product goes global. So that's a huge impact from a small group of people. And once you start building, you want to validate the solution you are building. It took us 9 months to get to the initial release, which I would say is almost like unacceptable. Typically, we try to release much faster, but in this case, there were really deep changes necessary. So it took us 9 months. On the other hand, we had like 30 customer calls every month just to demo what we have and just to validate what we do with the customers. So even though the product was not deployed on production, we still had the customer feedback and the validation. It took us a year after the release to get 150 customers, and from that point on, it just keeps growing quite fast. Now, this is the most important thing in the presentation. This is the one where most products fail, because you can build something amazing, but unless you can really offer it to the customers, sell it, it's pointless. So this is the one important thing I want to share with you. You need to do the go-to-market, you need to sell the solution, and you need to scale it. What works best for us, I realized, is to find friends in other teams. So you have the go-to-market teams typically, is the customer success, customer support, and of course sales. And you want to be very, very good friend with these people because they can help you, they can sell your product. So what worked for us best was just understanding the goals of these teams. So if the customer success team has a goal of upselling certain amount of money, best thing you can do, approach them and tell them, look, I have a tool, I can help you. If you sell this solution, here is the data saying, I don't know, there are like 80% of Mews customers are selling parking spots in certain form. Here I'm giving you a tool to manage these parking spots efficiently and increase the revenue from it. That's a very strong message. That's something the customer wants. And if you explain how you can help them achieve their own goals, they will make you successful. You must be seen, you must be visible in all internal meetings, all hands meetings, and so on. You also want to be visible externally. So we write a lot of articles, we attend trade shows, we visit the customers, we travel all the time. And it's just about the visibility, because if you build a true innovation, you are changing the industry, you are changing the mindsets of people, and you cannot just do it by, sitting and working on a product. It must be seen. So once again, this is the most important part, I would say. This is just some example here. We have like beautiful presentation on our website. We have customer case studies where we clearly demonstrate the impact of the product. We have blog posts about how we see the future, how we transform hospitality. We do webinars, and there are many other things that we do around the product marketing. And now once you have this, it's time to grow the team, because obviously you cannot do all of this in those 3 people. That's not possible. So today we have 7 developers, we have a PM, we have a tester, data analyst, we have people in product marketing, product content, and the goal is to have like everyone you need to build the product and make it like standard part of your product portfolio, or how to say that. So it's no longer this small startup within a company. It's no longer the innovation hub. It's just full-fledged product team. And then, like, I guess you guys know this phase. This is nothing new. Once you have that platform, the first users, the team, you just iterate, scale, and focus. So today we are in nearly 2,000 hotels. We process more than 1 million bookings since the release, worth of 350 million euros. But what is important, I mentioned many services that the hotels can offer. There are even new industries that we could kind of grab. So it was very important for us to go back and to find one target segment, to find one area where we focus, because otherwise it's just like, yeah. You want to find the next step for the team, and we just chose one segment. This is the long-term accommodation, residential, and so on. And we are now focusing all our powers into that. This is just the timeline. This is what I presented before. So here you see that this all happened within 5 years. And it's always like you deliver something on the product, and then it's related to some go-to-market initiatives, some marketing, some case studies, and so on. So this must be combined. You don't want to build for too long before you start with these initiatives, because then the adoption is just slow. And if you do this right, the customers will like your product because it's an innovation. It's giving them some kind of competitive advantage. So if you have 2 hotels and one is using your solution, they will probably have a higher revenue than the other one not using it. So they will really love you. And this is what we see every day. You will make your company more resilient, because that example with COVID, I think, can be applied here. If you can only do the accommodation and wait for the guests coming from a different country, you will go bankrupt. But if you can take all the other resources that you have and sell them to someone living or working in your city, you can probably survive. So that same can be applied to your own business, and it will become more resilient. Last but not least, the investors will notice. Because again, your company is unique, your product is unique, so you will have an advantage when you negotiate with your investors. Here it is. So yeah, I want to show you this one. It's basically the adoption of the product. So it's the number of bookings which were processed through the solution. So in the first year, the maximum was like 5,000 per month. The second year was over 10,000 and 25,000. Now we are 120,000 per month. What works for us is always trying to double the numbers. It seems like not a huge deal, but if you double your results for 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, or 10 years, then the impact is really huge. Just do the calculation yourself. And yeah, I wanted to also show this one. The things that we built and the product that we built had a positive impact when we were negotiating the investment, because our investors noticed. And you can see, they start with the vision. That was the number 1 point that I had. If the vision is good enough, if it's strong, and if they see the delivery, if they see just the progress and the business growing, then you have a potential to be interesting for them. So this is the result. And yeah, that is it from me. If you want to learn more, there is a great book about this topic. We also have it here. So if you play Kahoot with us at the end of the session, you have a chance to win it. If you don't win, buy it. It's worth it. On many examples from the history, they describe why it is difficult to innovate in large and established companies, and how you can avoid the failure if you do it right. So one of the best business books I have ever read. And yeah, that is it from me. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for the talk. You mentioned that the team at the start was 2 engineers and PM, which was you. So you work without any designer on the start. When the first designer joined, and how basically the prototyping at the start works without the designer?
I think it was like a year after we started, because like Mews, it's like a B2B software, so the patterns are relatively easy or very easy back then. So we just approached it as a Lego. So we were just using the existing components and reusing them in the system. Also, as I said, it was often about changing the underlying logic, the business logic in the system, much more than changing the interface, because we just needed to unlock like new time units, new services. But if you configure like accommodation surveys and meeting room surveys, you are using the same interface. You just use different parameters in the flow, but you are using the same interface. So it was not that much like design heavy. It wasn't that much about changing the interface. It was more about implementing the business logic, which allowed us to support these new services.
Okay, got it. And a second question, you mentioned a lot of research that you have 30 sessions per month. So the research was done by you as a PM, or did you work with some research, UX researchers inside the Mews?
So we work in product trios in Mews. If you are familiar with the concept, in the team there is a designer, product manager, and tech lead, engineering lead. And with this trio, we constantly talk to customers. So it's like we do like every day we have calls with them, sometimes multiple calls. If the day is really, really strong, you have like 3 or 4 calls per day. And that allows you to really build the expertise. So the calls get more and more efficient because you immediately know what to ask them, what kind of questions you should ask. If they answer, you already can follow up quickly to those questions. So in the beginning, it was more like kind of exploration. Now when we do these customer talks, they're about very specific topics. And if you talk to many customers at the same time, you just start seeing the patterns and it gets easier. The more you talk to customers, the easier it is to ask the right questions and to build a good solution. But yeah, it's not we have a research team in Mews, but like again, like we were the small team. We didn't have access to these resources. And back then in COVID, everything was kind of bootstrapped. So we just had to do it ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Great talk. Thanks.
Okay, hello. I have a question. You showed a chart with the number of customers. And here you can see the really big growth from the start of the year. So I want to ask if you developed something important last year, or you changed something important based on the feedback, or it was just organic?
So this is it's not number of customers, it's number of reservations here. But yeah, the customer adoption chart looks pretty much the same. So it's just about like, we are selling more and more deals with customers who are coming to us because the solution that we have. So in the beginning, it was mostly us explaining to them why they should use the product. Now it's new customers approaching Mews because they want it. Like the peak here, it's interesting, but I was like, the product was used to manage the Olympic Village in Paris last year. So there's the peak in the reservation, then the Olympics stopped, so we went down a little. But it was an interesting experience and probably a good proof that the solution scales and that it's stable and so on. So that was a nice validation for us.
Great talk, by the way. It's interesting that you cited Christensen first 2 slides and then moved to Lundshot's books. So they a little bit contradict each other, so it doesn't matter. So from perspective of your organization, so how different this product was from what you actually did before? And was it like completely different market, or it's the same market, but you kind of grow your...
So like in the beginning, again, like not many hotels were asking for it, but we were lucky to find the kind of early adopters, the visionaries who said, this makes sense. We can start selling our rooms for short stays and long stays and combine it for, to kind of balance the seasonality and things like that. So it was, in the beginning, it was very different from the market that we served back then because there were only few of these visionaries. But now, as I showed you, we always push this message that Mews is different and allows all this kind of innovation and different approach to inventory management and so on. And it's more and more customers coming to us for this particular reason. So today, there is a good alignment between what we do and what the market and what the customers are expecting. In the beginning, it was like, what are they talking about? Now they get it, and now they know how to use our software. I hope I answered the question.
Almost. So, are you trying to, suppress the Booking.com or something?
It has, like, Booking.com is a distribution platform, so that's for people who want to book their stay. Mews is the property management system, so we are directly connected with Booking, actually. We have, like, direct integration between their API and ours. And we just allow you to manage the business efficiently, to set the correct pricing on your rooms, to set the correct function on your rooms with this, to basically manage your staff, manage your housekeepers, to just run effective operation. But Booking.com is like acquisition and distribution platform. So they sell the service that the hotel is offering. We allow the hotel to offer better service, I would say. We are not competing with them at all. We are partners, actually.
You mentioned that you're on the calls a lot with the customers, but you also travel to customers. So do you have some interesting example of your customer visit?
They are all interesting, of course. No, but it's I can give you a nice story with one of our favorite customers, and they're actually the visionary that I spoke about in the beginning. So it's called Social Hub. The Social Hub, it's a Dutch company. They combine long stays, short stays, student accommodation, plus co-working spaces and so on. And once we had this vision published, they came to us and they say, look, we want to use this. We have our own vision and it's pretty much aligned. So we want you to build the software for us. So yeah, we were working on it for a few months. And then they came here to Prague. We were sitting over there in the old office. And I present the solution for 30 minutes. And Nigel, the head of IT from this customer, is looking at me for 30 minutes. I finish and he's like, Martin, we need a rocket, you give us a fucking paper plane. And that was his how to say that, yeah. But from that point, we got to completely different place. Now they are extremely happy with us. And all the visits that we do are always interesting because either in Prague or in Amsterdam or in other cities, we are going to Madrid in 3 weeks. We always have a good time together. And we became really good partners, I would say, because our visions are just aligned for months and years into the future. And you can clearly see the impact. If you come to TSH today, like the check-in experience is fully automated. The hotel is fully automated. They manage all these services that I mentioned, and they manage them all on single platform. And as a guest, you can benefit from it, because when you book your stay, you can also book your meeting room. You can book other services, and it's very easy for you to go through that process.
I would like to go back to your initial phase, actually. You have mentioned that it took 9 months, yeah? So I would like to ask, what were the reasons or challenges you have faced with, and how you have resolved? Thank you.
So the challenges of the initial phase, like I would say there was just huge amount of work and not enough people. So that's why it took us 9 months. The vision was clear, like the obstacles and all the milestones were clear. We understood it. You saw the article about the technical vision that was written by our CTO back then, who was the architect of Mews. So we had always, every day we had access to him and we discussed the decisions and the plans. And I wouldn't say there were too many obstacles. It was just insane amount of work because the product that we built is touching all domains of Mews. It's touching the initial setup, it's touching the reservation flow, it's touching the distribution flows, it's touching reporting. So there was a huge amount of work that had to be done before we could release even the basic version, the initial iteration. That was it. It wasn't that much about the unknown. Everything was known, but it was just a lot to build.